It's wonderful to be here, and really thanks to the People Matters team to get everyone together in a forum like this. I'm extremely pleased to be leading this panel discussion. We have a distinguished jury panelists with us, and we're going to talk about benefits, the changing landscape of benefits, especially given the technological advancements that are happening in the digital space. And throughout the morning, I'm sure you've been hearing a lot about digital stuff. The last panel discussion was also a lot about digital. So here in our discussion, we're going to talk a little more around how digital is affecting benefits space, right? And since we're mostly HR fraternity, we like a lot of pulse surveys. Here is the first one coming at you. Show of hands if you agree with the statement, benefits are making a comeback and are becoming an extremely important component of the employee value proposition. Show of hands, please. Okay. So great to see that a large majority of the HR fraternity present here agrees with the importance or criticality, or should I say that growing importance and criticality of benefits in the EVP space. And that's exactly what gets picked up in a lot of employee surveys that organizations do internally. This is also something which is getting reported in reports, recent reports from a Gartner or CEB, which clearly suggest that, in fact, benefits are being reported as a much more important constituent in the EVP rather than just paying competitive compensation. So with that, we're going to now change a little tracks and start to really talk about digitization in the benefits space, right? And I'm sure a lot of you here would remember the good old days when payroll used to be done on Excel sheets, etc. Leave management systems were the tedious pen and pencil, attendance register kind of era to now very swanky tools that we have managing leave management, payroll, etc. Organizations have gone an extra mile. There are quite a few organizations that have invested in tools for flexi benefits, meal vouchers, car lease program enrollments, etc., right? And that's what we're going to be really talking about. So the structure that we're going to follow for our discussion is we will look at the expertise of the panelists here to look at digitization in the benefits space from various vantage points. Vantage points of why go digital in the first place in benefits. What are some of the challenges or dilemmas organizations are facing when they embark on the journey of digitization of their benefits? What's the ROI from a business standpoint? And then, of course, talk about or learn from each other on some of the best practices that are already existing in the Indian corporate setup, right? So that's what we're going to be talking about. As you listen into the conversations, into the discussions, please make a note, preferably a digital note, on any thoughts, questions that come to your mind. As part of the discussion, we have planned sufficient time towards the end of the discussion to take up your questions and hopefully respond to them. And as the MC here just mentioned, there is an award for the best question, so please make sure that you make this extremely interactive and keep your questions ready towards the end. With that, let's get started, and let's just first really talk about the demographic shifts that are happening in the workforce, not just globally, but also here in India, right? In India particularly, and we were just talking earlier today, there are, and depending on what organization you work with, but typically 4 different generations that constitute your workforce, right? And hence it becomes extremely critical to contextualize your benefit offerings, your compensation offerings, to cater to what we now call the individual value proposition, right? So unique preferences of each of these generations, unique preferences of employees, etc. Rohit, this is where I look at you, since you represent Accenture having an extremely large and diverse workforce. How are you going about solutioning the diversity yet the IVP piece of benefit offerings?
Sure. No, thanks, Gaurav. I think I've been taking notes since the morning, so I'll refer to, I've put my discussion in the context of these notes. I hope you've seen some of the sessions as well. So we had David Green speak about hyper-personalization. In the morning we had Aarti from LinkedIn speak about the fourth industrial revolution, kind of going on. And Tanmay just spoke about, just in this session, spoke about AI be more human-like and humans with data, right? So I'll try to link this part of the conversation with these three themes. At Accenture, we've got about 170,000 plus employees. 85% of them are millennials. 40% of them are women. We've got about 75,000 LGBT allies, 1,500 people with disabilities, and we hire about 50,000 people every year. So if you think of the scale, across the cities and dimensions and everything else, compensation can do that much. It can do that much. And compensation in India, I think the growth has happened. It's kind of, in a way, has reached a pretty mature zone. So as you said, benefits is the biggest element. How do I look at hyper-personalization? Let me talk about that at one level. People at different life stages, people with different preferences, with different desires. How do we have benefits cater to them at the right moments is one thing that we're working on. Everything we have to do, we have to do it at scale. So how does it get to that level? And that's where the first part of what Aarti spoke about around it being a fourth industrial revolution. How do we leverage technology for that? So there are some things that we are doing, some things we are in the process of doing. So I'll kind of give you a flavor of both these elements. So we all have flexible benefits. We've got tech tools for that. What we're trying to do is really look at flexible benefits on a complete total rewards platform, where besides the element of what flexible benefits typically constitute, can we also get elements from benefits from outside the company? With 170,000 person organization, we can get some very good deals for our employees. Can we have a kind of total rewards marketplace where an employee can, again, at different life stages, elderly care, education, holidays, cars, or whatever else, can pretty much decide, how they want to allocate parts of their money, towards that, and how can they maximize their deals. And from that standpoint, using AI or machine intelligence, one more thing that I think Aarti spoke about in the morning was, it was David Green, saying that people are okay with sharing data, their data, as long as they get benefits out of it, right? So if I can leverage individual spending data on how they are maximizing their benefits and offer them as a company better advantages, more focused, kind of deals or benefits, it also helps my spend. So that's one element at a scale level that we're talking about in total rewards and how we're building the entire platform there. The second theme was around what we call truly human. What we also believe as human beings, as people who work in the workplace, how do I maximize my heart, body, mind, and soul of every employee, to give their best at work every day? And we've got a few elements from a benefit standpoint that we're also leveraging, we're trying to leverage over there. One is the Live Well app. So it's an app on the go, on the phone, where you can pretty much feed in parameters of what you want to focus on, from living well perspective. And the app gives you a kind of a routine and tracks you on the routine that can help you follow that particular element. We also have a health risk assessment where you can put in certain parameters of how you are today, where you want to get to, and we're working with a outsourced vendor on this, and you get a kind of 24/7 assistance on looking at your health risk parameters, seeing how you're progressing and where you want to get to. Thirdly, besides the physical part, we also focused on mental health. So that's where the element of, we just launched a pilot of an app called, it's called Vyasa. It's a mental health app, which pretty much has a bot. It's, once you download it, it communicates with you. And again, like you may have a pulse survey at an organization level, it's a personalized app for you. But the app kind of tells you every day, about how you're feeling, and depending on your response, if you're at a bad day, good day, happy, whatever, it can actually, it's got machine learning and AI into it, which can then guide you in terms of what steps you may want to take, including going to a counselor, if it finds that, hey, like a particular day you aren't really up to it. So I think at the physical and the mental level is something that we are attempting to kind of use digital technology at scale to get the hyper-personalization in.
Sounds great, Rohit. So the only question that I have, and seems like you have lots of offerings that are available to employees, how much of it is really pushed out to employees from either HR or whosoever is owning some of this, versus really a pull factor? For example, the Vyasa piece that you just mentioned, how much of it is a natural pull coming from the employees?
So, in fact, again, because it's at scale, whatever you do have to do at scale, I would want to experiment a lot more, ideally, but it is normally a pull factor. So we actually assess what's happening in the organization. Again, let's talk about mental health. I mean, we all have benefits which are physical, physical healthcare benefits, right? But we know from a data perspective that depression in general across the world is going up. The level of, and it's not, and people don't enjoy going to a counselor. They think that you're a quack or, something wrong with you or whatever. So I think that element to elevate the stigma of a person talking about, what they're going through from a mental perspective, at a physical level we've done. We've got counselors, we've got, we've got people who are at the workplace who are constantly helping people to kind of, eliminate that. This was one which, okay, now that's still physical. People still have to go into a room or whatever else. This we felt could be one, and we are still piloting it. We've about, I think, 10,000 employees we've launched the app for. But seeing that this can be something which can, for somebody who's shy, it can get a person, get the value of this. And that's where I think we are looking around the corner with this mental elements. But I think most of it, what we've tried is to say, we've really done a lot of design thinking workshops. Even on the Total Rewards app that I spoke to you about, that entire platform, we've been working on it for the last 8 months. It's going to be launched in the month of April next year. So the amount of surveys, amount of focus group discussions about what is relevant for different strata of our employee base, because you want to launch it right the first time, as far as possible, with the ability to kind of fine tune it. But that's where I believe we're doing a lot of the pull element. Basis what we are seeing around, then pushing it out.
Sure. Thanks, Rohit. Vipul, here, let me look at you from an ADP standpoint, especially given that ADP is a dominant HR technology solutions player. What are some of the advancements or tools that you have institutionalized within the organization or kind of sell to your clients in the benefits space?
Thank you, and of course, I worked with Accenture for a very, very long time, and whatever Rohit just mentioned, I've experienced it at some form or the other. So Rohit, I could recall a few things that we did when I was there. So I work for ADP, and I work for the largest HCM company in the world. So my entire stakeholder pool is a bunch of people who think they know HR better than I do, and my team does. We build products in the area of benefits, payroll, talent, recruiting, and everything possible in the HR space, insurance, etc. But if you look at it from my side, Gaurav, a couple of things which comes to my mind, and what we've been able to do in ADP is, as I speak to you all, we have close to about 35, 40 bots that actually work in our function today. Right from managing data from an integrity standpoint, data is becoming a significant large piece, to helping associates choose and actually guiding the behavior of an associate in terms of what's best for them is something that is pretty much driven by a machine which is working as a human in some form or the other. Like you mentioned, we've in the next 5 years, we will have 5 different generations working in this workforce. And these 5 generations will have different needs from a benefit standpoint. Like when I started 25 years back, we used to have something which was very, very good, which I think is good today, which was our superannuation program. But at that point of time, I thought that, this is crazy. Why am I just parking a part of my money, which I don't know whether I'll work at any point of it. Gratuity is another great example. The government has made huge strides from a benefit standpoint, if you look at what's happening in the provident fund space, what's happened in the ESI space, what's happening on pension funds, etc., is a huge, huge thing, that organizations are able to adapt today. And how organizations are able to adapt and drive their associates so that it helps build a value proposition for them is a great, is a very, very strong tool available. Like for example, today, one of the least penetrated benefits program in the market available is the National Pension Scheme today. It helps greatly from a taxation standpoint. It helps greatly from a return standpoint. Also, it has a long-term view, and a lot of people do not know about it. So from our, we have an app called the Ask HR app, where we are able to push some amount, looking at the profile of an associate. We are able to push some small tidbits to them, saying that this is the right thing that we did for you, that you can do for yourself. Our entire insurance program today, depending on the age profile of an associate, and what they do from dependence profile that they actually submit, what should they be doing and how is it that they should cover. You have different options from a health program. Once you get married, you have a different set of programs that currently exist. The lease program from a car standpoint is a large thing that is available. So technology is the key behind all this, the way we look at it, because at the end of the day, different people have different interpretation to a benefit program. Like I might interpret a program in a particular way, and maybe Victor will do it differently. But when there's technology that exists, it does it in a particular way, basis data that is fed to it, and basis some amount of intelligence that's been coded into it. So those are kind of things that we've been able to do, and I think we've been able to see some great rewards from an employee standpoint. If you look at it, some of the program, we are known, our entire value proposition from an employee standpoint is driven by how you touch the family. We say that you also come to work. Of course, the Tata Steel talked about it long back, but so we also come to work. We enjoy coming to work, and the most important thing is that it's work. It's your extended families. Our entire branding is based on that. So all this has been possible because we've been able to leverage technology, and a lot of people, a lot of our stakeholders do not know that there is a bot actually talking to them. It's not an associate who's talking to them. Makes our life a lot easier, increases the productivity of our associates, increases the productivity of the HR team, and of course, the responses have become a lot more consistent, and it's also more data-driven. So that's the way I look at it, and that's the way I think that the entire market will evolve over a period of time. I do not think, as workforces grow, I'm not sure that if without apps, when Accenture is 200,000 people, Rohit will be able to do much with just by throwing bodies to. So that's my
Absolutely.
take.
Right. So it seems like clearly there is lots going on in the space. A lot of organizations have already started to do a lot of work in terms of building tools, communicating those tools, making sure there is utilization, etc. But let's take a step back and just reflect on what are those top challenges or dilemmas that organizations face when either embarking on the digitization journey or trying to take it a step higher in terms of new products, new apps, new solutions being offered. So given your experiences, what are those top 3 challenges, scale versus contextualization, complexity, regulatory compliance, GDPR now? What are those top challenges for you?
If you look at it today, the biggest challenge that exists in the benefit space is that it's a very broken space. Like if you look at it, you have a separate space that you go for your insurance, separate space that you go for your car program, separate space that you go on your regulatory benefits that are available, separate program, the separate technology that you use for your NPS. Your payroll is a little broken. Of course, ADP does a great job on the payroll, not because I work for it, but you have connectors that are built on some of that. But the biggest challenge that exists today, and I always give this example, and I remember when I came in last time over here, you do not have a tally kind of a product that is available that you put in an invoice, and at the end of the day, you get a P&L statement or a balance sheet out. I think the biggest problem that exists in the market today is the fragmentation of technology on a benefit space. With more, as I walked today around the whole conference area, the number of startups and the number of companies that I see in the space of benefits administration is something that is sometimes drives you a little crazy. But that's what it is. I think that is a huge challenge, and I don't see this ending very, very soon.
Right.
And of course, large corporations like ours, we are in this space and we are thinking of ways to solve this problem, and I do not think we have an answer, to be very, very honest with you.
Okay. So fragmented space in terms of just too many vendors, too many tools, and from an end user as an employee, one having to touch through various tools to just get a simple solution. That's one challenge. Anish, you work with a lot of clients across different organizations, across geographies. What are some of the challenges that you hear from the companies that you talk to?
Thanks, Gaurav. Actually, instead of challenges, let me give you a couple of examples of good things that I have heard. Actually, I believe in the last 2 to 3 years, the world of HR has changed more than it has in the 15 years prior to that. But every day, every week, especially when I meet clients, I hear so many interesting things. But let me just, for all of you, just talk about 2 or 3. Actually, I'll talk about 3 very quickly. The first one, this is a mid-sized IT services company, very successful, fast-growing. They have about 8,000 to 9,000 people. And they said, traditionally it's senior management who have administrative assistants, okay? They said, why should this privilege be only limited to top management? So they used an AI-based solution to give all their employees a virtual assistant. So it's a virtual assistant who can help the employee with travel booking, with scheduling meetings, pretty much doing everything that a human administrative assistant would do. And I found that whole thing so different and refreshing. Second example, so at Sodexo, we've recently launched a product called a multi-benefit pass. And we were talking about this to one of our clients in the pharma sector. And we said, it's not just meal, you can do lots of different things, fuel, comms, blah, blah, blah. And then the guy said, yeah, this is all fine, but you know what? I'm keen to give a training allowance or a learning and development allowance to each of my employees. Can this be done through your platform? And it was the first, we hadn't kind of thought of that at that point, but we said, yes, absolutely. And we did it, of course, and they've gone ahead with it. But imagine the paradigm shift here. Training and learning and development is something you normally always tend to think this is something the organization drives. You have a training calendar, you have a set of programs, you have an e-learning set of modules. But here you're actually telling the employee, you know what? I'm putting this back on you. You spend the money in the way you think is best suited for your development. My only caveat is you can't spend it on eating out. That money needs to be only spent for training or learning purposes. And the third one, I think, is cross-industry, and Rohit mentioned it. Of course, Accenture has made a lot of progress. I think the whole area of employee well-being, every CHRO I meet says this is one of his or her top priorities. And yet, I think, by and large, I would say, in my view, Accenture is a bit of an exception in terms of the maturity of what you are driving. Many organizations struggle because there are so many options out there. Should I do a stepathon? Should I do some yoga classes? Should I have some health checkups? Should I put blood pressure machines in my cafeteria? And very often they start with something and then it fizzles out because it starts with a lot of fanfare and then it just loses momentum. Now here, I think, and again, going back to what Rohit said, there are a number of ways, number of platforms where you can actually put this back to the employee and say, you know what, go ahead, get a diet plan of your choice. Get a nutritionist that you like, could be even virtual. If you want to join a yoga class near where you live, we can do it for you. If you're traveling and you want to book an ad hoc gym session at a hotel which is next to where you're staying, we can set it up. And all of this can be done through the same platform. So I think, other than the fact that all of these examples relate to personalization and digital, I think one common theme is here in all these cases, the company is actually thinking of providing something to employees which you wouldn't traditionally think of as a benefit.
Sure. No, thanks so much for sharing some of these best practices that you pick up along the way when you talk to your clients. Vikram, let me look at you, and if you could just talk to us about the digitization of benefits from a Piramal Group standpoint. Are there, since it's a conglomerate representing different industries, are there particular trends that are very industry specific geography specific, and also touch upon the ROI aspect of some of the work that Piramal Group has done.
I think the most difficult question was put to me, but I will attempt. I think one of the, perhaps the debates we need to shift is talk about failures. So I'll openly talk about some things which did not work, because very often as a country we are so obsessed, and I'm still, like most of you here, still reeling under what happened to VG Siddharth of Cafe Coffee Days. So I think somewhere culturally, if we start talking about failures, I think it will help us even in digitization of rewards. So if it's okay, I'll present many failures to you today. I think the first thing is that, and let me start with a little story at home. It's a fight. I call it the Swiggification. So I will request you to think with me what's happening at home. Any of you have kids who order food on Swiggy, or you yourselves trouble your mothers and fathers with Swiggy? So how many households have got, in a way, their food chain disrupted through Swiggy? So me and my wife, we are 4 of us. The reason I'm saying this is our son, I didn't figure out, was a hardcore carnivore. We are all vegetarians at home, and this guy out of nowhere is always ordering on Swiggy. So when you analyze his Swiggy order, you realize that we have a carnivore in our midst, and we are 3 vegetarians at home. The other thing is, this guy loves cheese. And I can't imagine how much of food we have saved after just appreciating his choices. It's not that fully we've started cooking at home, but I think there is a lot more openness. So food saving has gone down. I think the other thing is his choices have informed us about what to make. Some of us have also, there's a lot more cheese and non-veg at our place. So the point I'm making is why this Swiggification is important is, I think in HR we are still thinking quanta of 12 people, 14 people. We've had these Zumba classes, why are 20 people not showing up? So I think there is a speaker who talked about personalization, but we in HR are still thinking the power of 20, 24, batch size. So I think that's been our biggest failure. When we approach people in batches, we still don't approach the power of 1. And therefore, I think if you have to take that first move, we have to accept if Swiggy has disrupted and democratized food at home, it has to be done in the workplace too. And I think what we found is actually when we digitize some benefits, and we have, I was sharing with the panel, we have multi-country operations. So we have 2 demographic groups in the Midwest, in the US, and in the East Coast. Similarly, we have 2 parts of groups in UK and Scotland. We have Sri Lanka operations, and India, you know, is a big continent. So I think first request or first thing we have seen is the moment we started looking at paternalistic approaches to benefits, saying I know what I will serve, and I think speaker after speaker is talking about it, that's where we failed. Point number 1. Point number 2, it's about trust. We realized wherever we tried to do a lot of benefits in a place where employees were not trusting us, attrition levels were high, where engagement was low, this whole benefits thing bombed. Benefits, and it works in a place where there is comfort, there is trust, people want you to be a part of their lives, and not when they want you to be at a distance. So I think in organization, we've realized don't look for digitization in a place where there is low engagement. There are other factors, other things which are missing, because people don't seem to want you into their lives so much. And so in a forum like this, I can easily say which places are engaged, which places are not engaged. India, by and large, is a more engaged workforce. But I don't think our US colleagues and our UK colleagues have yet let us or come in and help them digitize. They're saying, no, we will manage. You know? So I think that's been an insight there. But we've done a lot of pilots. We, as a group, think a lot about food, like many of you are thinking right now. So nutrition-based, we've had a lot of case studies and pilots on that. So both nutrition and wellness. If I talk about our ROI on nutrition-based, I was just looking for some data because you have to impress all the people in the audience. But Here's the sad thing, 73% of our employees in the pilot are overweight. And 46% of them want to have losing weight as their goal, stated goal. I think what has happened is, of course, our learning is linked that to what is going to happen in the gym, for example. So when we worked, not push, when we work to understand what do people want, our gym enrollment has gone up by 33%. You know, our water intake, I believe in that period of study, 30,000 liters of water went up. We were recording some of those intakes. 26,555 kilometers people walked a lot more. So I think we also lost collectively, I think in this group, they lost about 163 kilos. So I think the way I look at it is we have to go deep, understand what the group wants. If they allow you to in their lives, that's where you start to begin. Otherwise, back off, win the trust, win other things, create that ecosystem. That's been our journey. The other thing, sometimes we assume that everybody understands benefits. Our big insight when we launched our ESS, we have a lot of workmen. I don't know how many people here have workmen, but oftentimes we assume that they understand the benefits. We realized that when we use technology, when we used small video snippets, when we used ways in which to explain the benefits to them, the app download went up, and more importantly, people's enrollments in the schemes went up. The wonderful schemes that you talked about. The fact of the matter is many corporates, NPS, a few other people, we are struggling for enrollment. Why? Because people don't understand those benefits. So I think digitization, making sure people understand those benefits, those are enrollment numbers going up is the biggest thing we've seen. One little data which we figured was very interesting, where we found that in terms of enrollments, we all know VPS. You know, how many of you are actually doing voluntary provident fund? Look around, there's still not even 50%. There is a scheme which, you know, when stock markets are down, there is no other way to earn 8% per annum. Here's something which is tax-free, but how many people are enrolling? So what we discovered is when we educate people, when they have the choice, then enrollments go up. So there is, those are some of our experiments. Yeah?
Okay. Thank you so much, Vikram. So now let's turn it over to the audience. You've heard us talk about what's working well, some of the best practices across different organizations, leading organizations. You've also heard us talk about some of the failures, what's not working well. What are the questions that you have for the panel?
My question to the panel, first of all, good afternoon to everyone. My question to the panel is that in today's competitive world where organizations are dealing with talent crunch and they are also wants to become the employer of choice, how do you see the benefits element in the overall employee compensation as a strategy to retain or to attract talent?
I can give it I'll give you one example again very close to my heart. LGBT, you know, as a thing, same sex partners, you know, benefits for them. Again, a lot of practices out there have benefits for families, for your parents, which again are fantastic. But I think we've introduced, you know, some of those benefits at Accenture. I think you might, I mean, a part of it is, yeah, it's the governance around it, you know, an undertaking of, you know, what, like there's some legal parts to it or whatever. But I think from a branding perspective, you know, for a company that cares, a company that looks at equality across, I think it positions the company very well. And that's a benefit that can do that. No matter how much of compensation I can give or whatever, I think my standing for that, you know, I think is a strong element about equality or getting to equal, you know, as a certain element. Same way, if you think about the benefits around, you know, around people with disabilities. You know, we also have gender reassignment surgery. You know, that we, you know, somebody who feels that, hey, I'm a man in a woman's body, or I'm still undecided of where I want to get to, and I need to figure some of those things out. We have counseling, we have we provide financial benefits towards those elements as well. So I think more so with the millennials, more so with people in general, wanting to be a part of a company that has got elements beyond profitability. It is the benefits, which can be that element coming up, and it's not just law. It's not just about providing creches, by a certain 500 meters or whatever, which is good. It's good that the government is doing that across, but I think it goes beyond law as well.
I think I just wanted to add a very quick point to what you said. And companies are realizing this. Compensation is when you pay your employees salary, you treat them as employees because that's a key part of the employment contract. When you start to think about benefits, you start to think about employees as human beings. You start to think about their quality of life, which companies have ignored, I think, to a large extent traditionally. But once you start thinking of them as human beings, what are the things that impact their quality of life? What can make their lives better and therefore make them more productive? That's where benefits is starting to become a much more important part of the overall employee experience.
Okay, thanks.
The way I look at it is slightly different, actually. There was a point where employees would not really see benefits as, because employees sees benefits and compensation as what is the money that they get. And I think organizations did not do a very, very great job in terms of articulating the benefits that they actually provide. The best company to do it was when I got a job offer on campus. It was for one of the largest banks, international banks. I don't want to take a name of it. But they actually added my insurance costs, my training costs, and they made it swell. But at the end of the day, they did the right thing. Today, if you look at it, like Rohit just mentioned, ADP provided a 12-monthly maternity benefit before it was actually an act. So, were we able to provide that information when we were hiring somebody, or were we able to communicate that benefit, is something that we were not able to do. Insurance for same-sex partners, this became an act last year, but this is something that, some organizations have been doing historically for a very, very long time, similar to what Rohit mentioned. And, so on and so forth. The ability of organizations to articulate, I don't think organizations have done a great job, because organizations truly have not seen the benefits of what benefits are. It's only now that, the organizations are actually understanding what's the real ROI in terms of the spend that they are making for a particular benefits, and organizations are talking about. Like a gym membership is not something which is new. I think all organizations have been providing this historically for a very, very long time. Counseling is something, you have counseling centers which are set up in organizations for a very, very long time. But what's the real ROI of all this? Organizations never did a good job. So I would also hold this on ourselves that we did not do a good job as HR managers. Organizations did not do a good job in seeing the benefits from a value proposition for a potential candidate or for an employee. So that's the way I look at this whole piece. And now that we are seeing value in it, we are talking a lot about it. It's like technology, technology was always needed in HR for a long point of time. We have come to a stage where cost is a big player, and we're talking about technology every day, day in and day out. I don't know how impactful, how effective we are, but we continue to talk about it every day. That's the way I look at it.
Right.
Good afternoon. So I'm Rohit Behel from Telocity. We provide the experience of touchless hiring using augmented intelligence and video interviews. My quick question to the, anybody could answer that is, there is a very fine line, thin line between tangible benefits and intangible benefits. So, without naming organizations, there are certain organizations, large organizations, where they're not very good paymasters. But people still like to stick on with the organizations because they love going there, because you're spending more time in the office than at home, and the entire ecosystem is such that they just love being there. Versus certain companies where they do pay a lot, but the environment is not so conducive. As HR leaders, how do you strategize, and how do you think going forward? How do you strike that equilibrium between tangible versus intangible? Is my question.
And I'm responding not because we are poor paymasters. I'm more responding to say how you should do it. I think the big thing, at least in our discovery, is that your benefits, both financial and non-financial, should resonate with your values. I'll give you an example. We at the Piramal Group, one of our values is entrepreneurship. We look for talent, And the way we've articulated it, we'll accelerate talent earlier than even maybe the talent think he or she deserves to be accelerated. So you'll find many examples of people who have taken up high roles when maybe their batchmates are not yet there in other companies. So I think sometimes the non-tangible benefits like growth, acceleration, careers, also must link to what you value or what is in your value set. Similarly, I gave you an example of care, which is really about more food. It's again not that tangible, or nutrition or wellness, but I think also about the intangible called growth. All of us want to grow. How do you grow people? How do you accelerate their careers? In fact, we have one example sitting here, my young friend Aditya, who heads HR for one of our group companies, the realty company. I dare say he's one of the youngest HR heads in the country. Of a group of that size. So I think it's how you live and connect those values with your intangibles.
Great, thanks. We'll have time for just one last question, since we don't want to be here coming in the way of your lunch. So one last question, and we'll give it to you.
So my question is to the panel. Basically, companies are now today talking about paternity leave, introducing paternity leave. And some organizations already have this for a few years. But then if you look at the data, most of the companies, these employees don't utilize the paternity leave for the fear that the position may not be there by the time this guy comes back. I can quote some names of the companies, but it may not be appropriate. So what is your view about that?
I will challenge you. The other reason is men are not caregivers in India. So all the women will agree with me. The day that changes, then you'll see paternity leave quotient also going up. Today, whatever you say, the primary caregiver of elders, of children, are women. So I think it is not just, it's linked to other social factors, and that's how you have to continue to maintain a balance and understand.
In fact, in Scandinavian countries, the law is 52 weeks of parental leave to be shared between both partners in whatever ratio they want. So you can imagine how progressive that is, and to your point, Vikram, maybe we have a different culture here.
But I would be interested to know the data of companies where people think that they will lose their job if they come back after pat leave. I think that's a notion which exists also with women. And I do not think organization of any repute or any standing would do that. But we can have a conversation, of course, after.
No, when I said this, I'm not just talking about Indian organizations. I'm talking about the multinational companies and also the statistics from outside of India,
Actually,
not just
for
India.
us, paternity leave offtake is really cultural. So if you look at what's happening in the US, certainly a lot more of our male colleagues are availing it. So I've linked, the way I've come to that conclusion is linking it to what's the state of the nation in terms of, who provides care.
And that's a great point, because I remember when I was young and I was eligible for paternity leave, and I actually did not take it, and not because of fear of losing my job. But yeah, I think, now that he's saying that, I was not the primary caregiver. So maybe that's another story. Your wife doesn't? My wife, of course, is an HR professional. So yeah.
Great, thank you so much. With that, it's a wrap. My fellow panelists, thank you so much for sharing your views. And audience, thank you very much for all the engaging questions. Thank you.
Thank you.